Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the American Soccer Club Zone. This radio show is brought to you on KJOY 98.3 in Farmingdale, New York. Great station here in beautiful Farmingdale with the airport just around the corner. We have a great show for you today, and we're going to be bringing in a guest. His name is Bob Montgomery, a legendary U.S. soccer figure, and specifically a New York metropolitan Long Island soccer figure. And we'll talk about the American Soccer Club Zone and the American Soccer Club, which Bob is part of in the sporting capacity. Before we get into any of that, we've had a real crazy end of the season, and we'll talk about that and where we've been for the last 2 weeks. It's exactly 14 days since the American Soccer Club's NPSL inaugural season ended with a kind of a very difficult, great game to watch, tough game to lose, 3-2 loss to New Haven, who became the eventual North Atlantic Conference champions. So a little bit of consolation there. But before we get anywhere, the American Soccer Club started in 2025, and we are really all about our partners, our investors, and specifically our sponsors, who are more like partners and investors than they are to commercial partners. And so we're going to go right through the three major sponsors here and give them a little acknowledgement. That show is brought to you by, LifeVac, our Jersey Front partners. LifeVac have saved over 4,000 lives to date, 4,400, I believe. CEO and founder Artie Lee and his LifeVackers around the country are on a mission. Save lives, and American Soccer Club New York are now partners in that noble endeavor. We're going to save lives together, and we have. Our medical partners are probably our most critical partners on the day-to-day existence of a professional soccer team. And Orland & Cohen Orthopedic Group, division of Northwell Health, they're on the Jersey back. They are incredible day-to-day partners. The incredible Orland & Cohen Orthopedic Group division has the state-of-the-art facilities all across Long Island, and they help our athletes get back in the game. They have been just incredible. Our uniform are how people know us. We share a great uniform apparel partner with Wrexham, the incredibly now internationally known Welsh team, 100-plus years old. It is now on an unprecedented ascent up to the Premier League, hopefully, if they get one more promotion. And we have more mutual partners in Macron. Macron is our apparel partner, U.S. headquarters in Bridgeport, out of Bologna, Italy. They've been phenomenal. So we thank LifeVac, Orland & Cohen, and Macron, of course. And then we have the Bongino Law Firm in Garden City, Long Island's best personal law injury firm, and A-Turf. It's America's top synthetic turf manufacturer. A-Turf Fields, last in industry leading, 14.5 years. And they are from the Buffalo Bills Stadium, the longest-lasting NFL stadium at 8.5 years, to the Sousa FC Orland & Cohen Complex in Central Islip, New York. A-Turf provides playing surface, most like natural grass in pristine condition. And BQE Soccer Partners is the architects of the soccer club, the American Soccer Club New York. And we would not be sitting here in these beautiful Farmingdale KJOY studios if not for Todd Shapiro and Associates, the top PR agency in the country in my mind. And you can learn more about the American Soccer Club New York at ascnewyork.com and on all social media. We're pretty good on that. We're pretty active. And although we're technically in the off season, our next conversation here with Bob Montgomery will tell you a lot more about the club. There is no off season, but this is technically our first time to regroup. So we've had 2 weeks to do it, but we didn't spend a lot of time relaxing. We did a feature. We were fortunate enough to be identified through some great coverage in the New York Post by CBS Sports. CBS Sports, we did two features last week on Dylan Lopez, our 16-year-old phenom that we've signed out of Ronkonkoma in the Atlantic FC club on Long Island. He actually got on the field twice this year. Bob and I will talk about him. And also Stalin Acosta, an incredible story of a perseverance and dedication. Stalin's been through, he's one of our players from Brentwood High School, Cortland College, Cortland University, who's been through a bout of cancer, come back stronger than ever. He's one of the fittest guys on the team. So CBS was incredible to identify these two guys and do two stories on them. And last but not least, really a banner week leading up to our show this morning. And my brother Brian and I, my famous brother Brian and I, who's on Fox News Channel and hosts about 5 different shows a day, and a radio show, we were brought on to Fox 5 New York to do an interview, good 5-6 minute interview about the club. Brian's an investor and a soccer advocate just like we are. And we had a great interview with some great hosts, and we're very grateful for that. But we're even more grateful for our guest here right now is a guy that when I was growing up, he's a few years more mature than I am. I'll say that, Bob. But he was an iconic coach that if he did recognize you as a player, you really felt like you had arrived. He's the coach of Adelphi University. He was a great player himself in East Meadow and Nassau Community College and at Adelphi University, and then in the senior leagues of the LISFL and beyond with Lynbrook Steuben for years. So Bob is, he's a Long Island Soccer Player Hall of Famer. He is an iconic coach. He was Red Bull, New York Red Bull really launched their academy system, which is was one of the best in the country and still is. 13 years, gave birth to players like Tyler Adams, Matt Miazga, and so many others. So I'd like to welcome the legendary Bob Montgomery to the radio show today. Bob, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much, Jim.
Great. I know
you're excited for being part of the ASC and seeing how we can really help players on Long Island and create some great players for professional ranks down the road.
Well, one of the best things that Kevin Reardon and I, my managing partner from Hicksville, Fordham guy, is one of the first things we say we have to do is we have to get the smartest people we can to be involved with us to help us maximize what we're trying to do here, which is launch a club that can identify and launch players into not only the U.S. national team but into Europe. And one of the first people we contacted and you gratefully accepted was you, Bob, with regard to the sporting committee to become one of our board members and to help us direct things going forward, not only with the professional team on the field, but probably the most important thing we're going to be doing is identifying players and helping launch their careers. And I will say this, because I know you're not a big bragger at all. One of the things I said on the Fox interview that I was glad I got it out the way it should come out is that at one point in time, we were producing national team captains, U.S. national team captains, World Cup players from Long Island. Mike Windischman, Chris Armas. Mike Windischman from Queens and Chris Armas from Brentwood. And they have one thing in common. They both played for Bob Montgomery at Adelphi University, and they were U.S. national team captains. There's been a bit of a wasteland in between all that. We've got a lot of good players, Bob. Did you know that those two guys were guys that had that kind of ability when you were first recruiting them as high school players?
That's such an unbelievable achievement. I would never say that, I foresaw that. That would be kidding a lot of people, including myself. I knew they were very talented players. I knew they could go a long way. It's a difficult thing. There are many roads that, in the future that cross over. And they made good choices. And they were surrounded by good people as well. And they were very, very hard workers. The two of them loved the game. They were passionate and they practiced so much on their own time.
Yeah, so you just saw two really, players with great potential, and then they obviously got into a great environment with a good culture at Adelphi, which, had some of the better players around the country for a long time, and also just had a very good program. You had built a really good program. You had great assistant coaches that all went on to coaches, including Tommy Lang, a coach that actually went on to coach with, for me, my senior year at Hofstra University across town, and then went on to an amazing career at Southern Connecticut University as well. One of the things that we always talk about is the state of the national team. We're going to pull this back to how American Soccer Club may or may not play a role in that. Because victory for Kevin and I in the build-up to this club being launched was that if one day we're sitting here and there's one of our former players, academy or otherwise, is on the U.S. national team, and the other way to look at it is if we launched our players into careers like Joe Scally. And we always talk about Joe Scally, and we're never going to be sick of talking about him. We had Joe actually come visit us and spoke to the team. He's a 22-year-old guy from Lake Grove and played for the Sachem Soccer Club in the Long Island Junior Soccer League. And, Joe got into the New York City FC Academy, across town from Bob's Red Bull Academy. And he was one of those few kids that he was, when scouted to go to Germany and play for Borussia Mönchengladbach, he not only had the physical ability to do it, but he had the mental ability to deal with that adversity and a new culture and the whole thing. But we've gone to the point where there has to be more than one Joe Scally, or one Chris Armas, one Mike Windischman. And now, Bob, do you think that's a little far-fetched, or do you believe that there's players being missed out here that if we got them early enough, that we could have the next Joe Scally, potentially?
Oh, yeah. There's talent there, and they need to be put in a good environment, like you said before, playing with and against the best players, with good coaches surrounding them, and pushing them in the right direction. And unfortunately, too many clubs are focused on winning trophies at 8, 9, 10 years of age that really at the end of the day are meaningless. And development has to be the key. You've got to have good parents surrounding them that understand that. And that helps, gives you an opportunity to help players become successful.
How did you look at it when you had a chance to create a culture in an academy with Red Bull? Maybe one of the biggest challenges of your life, having, how much, 30 years at Adelphi, one of the longest tenured coaches in the country, but 13 years at Red Bull, starting from nothing when MLS was really not that committed to their academy, but kind of felt youth academies, but felt like they kind of had to do it. I know you went through some dealing with the first team and then not really looking at your kids, and then ultimately you became one of the best academies for launching professional players in the United States. Was that the toughest or most challenging position you've ever had in soccer?
I really don't think of it as being that challenging. I think we had a good plan. Again, we surrounded ourselves with good people, coaches that really cared about kids and wanted to help them and develop them and had no ego. The people above me, Mark de Grand Prix was fabulous. He interviewed me, gave me the job, and our sporting directors over the years mostly were very supportive of the academy. I mean, at the end of the day, I had conversations on a daily basis with Jesse Marsh and Chris Armas and some of the other coaches of the first team. And Jesse Marsh knew the names of half the kids in our academy. If we had a weekend, I'd send a report out. Generally, we won games, which wasn't important. Jesse would say to me, "How's the little redheaded kid? What's his name? On the U14 team, and I liked him. And did he play?" And I'd say, "Well, he played up with the 15s this week, held his own, and set up a goal." And he's going, "Yeah, I think that kid's got talent." And that makes a huge difference in a club when you've got the big men, from the big team, knowing the players. We would have training sessions on a Saturday. They would have a practice for prior to the day before a game, a light kind of session. And he would send the players over and they'd stop at our bench and they'd go up to the 12-year-olds and they'd, shake their hands and ask them how they're doing. And great motivating factor in doing something like that.
Because I know you didn't have that from day one when you had a couple of coaches from Europe that were not necessarily looking at this the same way.
No, Bruce Arena was, the guy who called me and said, "Bob, this is a perfect job. We want you to come interview." And Bruce was not convinced that they were ready, and he was right. The group of players we had when I took over, we didn't really have a guy. But in the second year, Jeff Agus, the technical director, he said, "I think we need to sign a guy and let people know that we're serious about this and who is the best guy." And George Chagazi became the guy, and he was on the team for 2 years. But he was the first one to get signed. And then after that, more and more. We finished with about 150 kids in the academy, and we had about 150 kids in those 13 years that played for different youth national teams. And we had twice as many. The number 2 and 3 team in the country at one point was Dallas and PDA from New Jersey. And we had about 125 guys, and they had like 52 each. So, but the reason New York City is just such a great pool of players to tap into. So, I always don't want to take all the credit. At the beginning, we were the only cost-free academy in the country, which when I interviewed, that was one of the first questions I asked. And they said, "Of course, we're a European club. We don't charge." All the kids had to do was get to the training facility. And that's the way I believe the USASC has to be as well. If the parent can get them there, we can take care of them. We can help them with shoes and we can help them with equipment and those things. So they were fully funded. We flew, we took buses, we took any transportation, meals, we picked up. We stayed as a team with all the age groups, except, the U12s were first year just a domestic team. But we sounded ourselves. Number 2, there was no New York City FC Academy. There was no Philadelphia Academy. We drew players from not the tri-state area, but we drew it from 5 different areas. We had Long Island and New York City. We had Connecticut. We had North-South Jersey. We had Eastern PA. So everybody wanted to come and be a part of it once they realized that it was the truth, that it was going to be cost-free. And they saw the players we had, and they saw the way we played on the field. And we played really good soccer. So
yeah, and you went through all the hiccups of the MLS not being fully committed to it, the organization not being fully committed to it, to all of a sudden having the success and then becoming the model. So now, flash forward to 2025, you're sitting at the top of advising this new club called American Soccer Club, which is our club, meaning you, me, Kevin, and a lot of other people that are involved. And there's some great people like Jimmy Rooney, former great player that came out of this area, a different generation. Perry Vanderbeek, former national team player. Farouk Qureshi. and Mark Lugris, who's still active in the game today, as you are in the youth game. I think everybody shares one thing that I think that everybody shares that I've just mentioned is that the way it should be done, and then also now we have to figure out how we can break through this absolute cluster of youth soccer that is not getting better. It's getting, in some ways, it's getting worse. And it's becoming bigger money grab than ever, and which I don't begrudge anybody. It's given a lot of people in soccer jobs, and I think that's great. They didn't exist years ago, but right now it just seems to be more money, more money, more money. We have to somehow come up with a way to break through that, and I don't think it's just one thing we have to do, but we're going to be getting in a room soon, off-site, out of state, and putting our heads together to find out the best way of launching. I think up to now we can share with the world that we've talked about maybe launching something in a supplementary form. It starts out with getting our name out there in the youth community, using the fact that we, in some ways, I give John Fitzgerald and his staff a lot of credit because, as you know, Bob, is that you could recommend players to Red Bull head coach, whoever it was, Bruce Arena or all the other guys you work with, but they still have to win games or they get fired, and so they don't necessarily want to take too many chances. And I give John and Juan and everybody and Vic that. We put a 16-year-old into training. He did well enough. You saw him come to training too, Bob, I believe, at Burns Park in Massapequa. And they, due to injury, they took a chance and got him into 2 games, 15, 20 minutes, and he held his own and did a couple of good things and gained that experience. And so, if you don't have the whole organization on the same page, we can't have this. So we actually have a little bit of a proof of concept. What is your thoughts of it? Did you think we would be this far ahead? Do you think we're behind? What's your feeling? Because you're a little closer to this than some of our other sporting committee people because you're here and you just show up at fields sometimes and watch our practices. And I mean, I came down to training one night, and by the way, this is not glamorous. You train 9 to 11 o'clock at night, 3 nights a week, and you train hard. And we brought a 16-year-old in there whose mom had to drive him out there, and he actually had to miss, for a CBS interview, he had to miss driver's ed. But when we do all this, it's one thing to say this is what we want to do. It's not easy to do. What's your thoughts on what we were able to do this year as far as bringing in at least one young player to give him a chance?
I thought it was great. And Dylan, I was over at the Field of Dreams in Massapequa watching a practice, and I enjoy it's important to watch practice, not just games, and to really see the guys in different environments and different setups. And I'm watching the game, and they're scrimmaging at the end, and I went over to one of the coaches, and I said, "Who's this kid here playing in the back? I don't recognize him." They said, "Oh, that's a new kid. He's from out in Suffolk County, and he's a young 16-year-old," and whatever. I said, and he did well. He held his own, and managed to have a chance the next time I went to practice to pull him aside, and we chatted a little. But great kid. He's got great character, which is important because we build teams with good people and good players. That's got to be a starting point.
Well, see, I think you're right because we've through and once again, there's a big pressure on us. I don't know if the world knows this, but the soccer people, some people that will be listening to this show, that will be bringing the show to them, will understand that right now, the MLS that you started with a real academy, which was fully funded in Red Bull and set the standard for the United States, which now has a lot of other great academies out there, including Philadelphia, and Dallas and others. But the MLS has now reached down with an MLS Next One, which is which you pay for, just like any other club. You pay, and you pay a decent amount of money. And now there's an MLS Next 2. So people come to me sometimes, Bob, and they say, "Jim, where are you going to fit? Are you going to affiliate with MLS? You're going to affiliate with USL? You're going to try to do something with ECNL? Do you affiliate with Sousa, big club? We know you built that facility." And I tell them, guys, we're taking it day by day. We're talking to everybody. We're supportive of everybody. We're not against anybody. We don't see ourselves necessarily affiliating with anybody right now. But we have a lot of clubs reaching out to us, as you know, Bob. That's how Dylan came to us, is that we were approached by some clubs in Suffolk County who were about affiliating so we could be a pathway, but they wanted exclusivity. And I said, no, we're not going to do that because we believe there's a kid in a small club in Amityville or Copeg or, East Hampton that may not be affiliated with a big club like Sousa or some of the other clubs that are MLS now or ECNL, that there's players there too, so we can't exclude anybody. So I don't know what's your thoughts on this philosophy, Bob, having been at the beginning before it got this complicated, and also how do we adapt to now?
Yeah. Open door policy. You want the best players. There can't be restrictions, financial, that all of a sudden cuts kids out of the picture. and ways to support the family in assisting with travel, setting up carpools. But I'll tell you from the beginning, the biggest part of my job at Red Bull, because financially we had the support, we had full backing from a major company and the owner and our club here in New York. So we had all that. But the big thing was building bridges with the local clubs. And how do you go about that? And really letting them know that, when you're in Europe, if you're a young kid and you're playing in Seaforth out in Lancashire County, which is in Liverpool, right? A good player, and Liverpool, Everton call up and say, we like this guy. We want to bring him in to train with us. We might want to sign him. They are ecstatic about that. As opposed to here, they're like, you're not stealing my player. Of course, my answer was always, he's not your player. He's got parents. They're the ones in charge. They make the decision. But, and then we just try to create a good rapport with them and help them out also. So that'll be a key issue again as we start this up again.
So I think our instincts are right at this moment. I wrote this down. Open door policy and building bridges, which means you can't exclude people.
Yeah, exactly.
So basically, what struck me, and I don't know if it struck you or if you're so busy doing what you were doing on the other side of the river in Jersey, when NYC came in, and we have great respect for what they're doing and building a stadium, it's just incredible what's happening in our country. So and I say this with admiration, but I remember they aligned with like 12 or 15 or 10 clubs. I'm not sure how many. It was Gotchi and Med Oval and FC Westchester and some of the really top clubs that were producing a lot of good players in this area. And for me, it struck me, though, that although I understood what they were doing, what they thought they were doing, but you're excluding 100 other clubs that are not part of your ecosystem, which means that they don't feel like they want to come to your game, buy your scarf, buy a hat, buy your replica jersey. They're not going to feel part of what you did. I always thought that because I'm more of a marketing guy, and I felt that was a little exclusionary to me. And I know we're not going to make that mistake. Did you see that as the way I saw it, or do you know why they did that?
I think those were development academy clubs, a lot of them, and they wanted to tap into that. And they were a startup. They had nothing. See, when I went to Red Bull, they had already had an academy team beforehand. They did it as a summer program. They had a training program which was extensive. They worked with 150 clubs. So I had eyes out there looking at young 8, 9, 10-year players, and they would help recommend players to the club. So New York City didn't have anything in place. They started from scratch, and I guess they thought this was the best approach. And in hindsight, by adding people, and in this special way, you do eliminate people. So
yeah. And by the way, if you're just tuning in, my name is Jim Kilmeade. I'm your host of the American Soccer Club Zone. Our guest is Bob Montgomery, we're so fortunate to have on our leadership position in our sporting committee. She's got a bunch of great people. We're talking today about everything ASC New York, but also everything U.S. Soccer and how Bob began an MLS Academy when they first made their commitment. Now, you've been around the team a little bit, Bob. I also know you're somebody that is supposed to be retired, but not really. You're at a soccer field today, taking a break to speak with me, which we appreciate. And you watch young games, you watch high school games, you show up. You really just love the sport, and you're really learning. This is probably a question that deserves its own show, but we only have probably about 5 minutes left, so we're not going to discuss today how we break through, because I think we're going to keep an open door policy and take every relationship one by one, as you have advised. What are the differences, if any, between the players you recruited to play at Adelphi in the 70s and the 80s and the regional teams and the national programs that you were involved with everything? And you and Bruce Arena are at the forefront of the U.S. national team, putting guys on those teams. And those are the teams that we kind of, the Tony Miolas and the John Harkses and the Brian McBrides. What do you see the biggest difference between the mentality, having coached them and now watched them also from your position with experience, between the 70s, 80s, 90s, and the current kid? Obviously, they're living in a different world with phones and ADD personified. Do you still feel kids? Do you think is it really that much more challenging to coach and develop a youth player today, based on two things: their makeup and their background because of the world we live in today, and the options that they have? What's the biggest challenges? And do you think the kids are still? Let me just narrow it down. Are kids that much different, Bob, or is that overstated?
I don't think kids are. I think parents might be educated improperly and that might be a difference. The parents of a lot of the great players that I had, they came from great parenting. Parents that cared for them, loved them, tried to help them, but didn't try to run the show and didn't get caught up in a lot of falsehoods that are out there. There's a lot of myths about development. And if we look at teams, I do go out, I watch a lot of youth, and I see some really good young players, and I see some nice teams, but they're in the minority. This focus on winning means let's get the biggest, strongest guys, whatever, and we're going to have them, and we can outrun, and we can knock other people down, and we can win. But winning at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 doesn't necessarily help, or the best players at that age that physically dominate are not the best players at the end of the day. I was fortunate to be involved with the U14 U.S. national team. We had Christian Pulisic on it from the time he was 11, 12, and 13. He played 3 years. He'd come to 5 camps a year with us until the third year, the U15 took him. So he went and jumped and played up with them. Christian was a tiny little guy, but because of it, and he's playing 3 years up the first year, he had to develop technique, and he had to have great decision-making to survive in those games. And through his parents, his dad from Long Island,
Yep.
Mark is a former professional player, played at George Mason, and his mom was an All-American college player. But through their guidance and making good decisions, this kid thrived along the way. And he was a great player at 11 and 12 with the best under 14 players in the country. So that's really what we have to look for, is not just picking big guys. And I know the guys that are in the club, they feel the same way. So I think that's a key.
So listen, with 3 minutes left, you mentioned one thing that is definitely we have to touch on, playing up. I'm a firm believer personally. I'll defer to your opinion. I think we're going to agree, but I think you're going to add a little bit more nuance than I am able to. Christian Pulisic was playing up even then because his dad obviously knew that was a good thing to do. A lot of players, even when I grew up on Long Island in the 70s and the 80s, we played up and played sometimes with the men. I remember playing in the LISFL when I was 17, 18 years old as a freshman at Hofstra. It made me a much better player than I would have been otherwise and helped me maximize whatever ability I had. And by playing with 30-year-old men, and that's what we're trying to give for this kid, Dylan Lopez. How critical is that for player development? Do you think it's just an absolute necessity, or do you think it's just something that just we should add on to whatever our program turns out to be?
I'd say no, that I find out when I go around that it's over-exaggerated. Players should play up when they're ready to.
Gotcha.
When they're ready, there's no problem. Throw them in. The challenge is good. If they're not ready, it can destroy their confidence and their belief in themselves, So we had, and that's one of the things that people profess is, you got to play up. You got to play up. And parents would come to Red Bull and to their coach and say, can he go play up? How come he's not playing up? We don't think he's ready yet. At the right time, he should go play up. And kids have to find the right place to play. And it's not the big name club necessarily. Maybe they need to be in their local club so that they can dominate, get to a point where they can dominate, and maybe they physically develop, and then they're ready, And good coaches will see and put them in the right place. And they're doing the favor. Some parents will say, well, if he can't play up here, we're going to go to Club XYZ. And we'll say, well, good luck to you.
And Bob, that's the nuanced answer that I'm glad I asked you, just the way I asked you, because it's not a yes or no. It's as you said, your words are when they're ready, and you have to, and then whoever's deciding when they're ready, that hopefully is the right person that knows what they're looking at. And as I say, you can't teach this off paper or in a coaching course. You just have to have that intuition and that experience, I think. So, and clearly you do. So, I know you're excited to do it. We'll be sitting in personally off air and making decisions of how we start this academy. But I'm as excited to start the academy as I was to start the pro team. And Bob, with a couple of minutes we have left, you've been around teams forever. You've been around teams that won everything, with teams that had bad seasons, middle of the road seasons. Looking at where we started, where we ended, and the team, the coaching staff, the players that we had, which are 90% all local, born and bred guys. How would you look at the season right now? I don't mean with a ratings, but what's your viewpoint from your experience level to see what we may have learned this year and where we are set for next year?
I had a chance to talk to the players and the coaches a little bit, and I don't make a lot of judgments because I did not see them often enough. You really have to be immersed a lot more than I was. But in general, on the outside, I can offer opinion. We had to get started somewhere. You have to start somewhere, and you just can't wait till you have the perfect scenario. So, yeah, the players were great. You watch them train, you watch them in games. The effort was great, okay? We didn't have very much of a long enough preseason to really prepare them. So, we look at some different things. But I think it went very well. John and his staff did a great job in terms of their effort and whatever. We didn't get all the players maybe we wanted through tryouts because we're the new guy on the block, and some kids want to be with a more established name at the moment. But it's moving in the right direction. The players themselves, again, I'll say it, they were great people. We had a good bunch that really cared for each other, worked hard for each other, listened and respected everybody in our club. And you've seen that when we have them doing different appearances and things, and that's important. Can we mold good young people? It's important.
Well, you know what? You're right. We don't have control over the result, but we do have control over the kind of people we bring into the organization. I thought that was a great point. I agree with that. And the more you get away from the last game of the season, the more you can actually get a more accurate assessment. Bob, I really appreciate you coming on the show today. I think a lot of people will take a lot of this. I know I personally have. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Always a pleasure.
And we'll be seeing you soon. That was the great Bob Montgomery, legendary American soccer figure. We're proud to have him on the show, the American Soccer Club Zone. To thank Mike Hogan, great job, producer. We had to make some quick moves at the end, and fantastic job. Thank you again to producers Stephen Coffey and Sylvia King, Todd Shapiro and Associates. And once again, on behalf of the American Soccer Club, KJOY 98.3, proud to bring you the American Soccer Club Zone. We'll see you next week.